what's up, and welcome to my humble abode. We are here today to talk about art. So last week I mentioned a little story. Okay, it wasn't last week, it was several months ago, but I always like to say last week because it sounds normal. My experience in art school and how in becoming a professional artist, I kind of realized something that they never tell you in art school. In fact, there are very many things they never tell you in art school. So welcome to a very long series about art business, art encouragement. It's all right here. Welcome. Today we are talking about art critique and how to really find joy again in painting. Art critique holds this very dangerous power to really erode your sense of self as an artist. We want to create work that is so undeniably full of passion that other people just cannot help themselves and they cannot tear their eyes away from it. And you only get there if you kill the critic. Whether you are wanting to sell your art or just be a hobbyist, just make art in general, I think it's a very natural inclination to want to improve. It's what gives you that little hit of satisfaction where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. This is great. I love it. And I really want to encourage you to understand that this improvement that comes with your art happens naturally no matter what as you practice. That's my personal opinion anyway. Let me know what you think in the comments, but I think that if an artist is practicing, if they're painting all the time, you're going to naturally improve. And I think that the practice of other people telling you what's wrong about your artwork, telling you which direction to push your artwork next, is actually very counterintuitive to improvement. If we think about improvement as going deeper down into your voice and having a stronger, louder voice, art critique teaches you to listen to the voices of others rather than your own voice. I also believe that there's a way to improve your artwork and to improve your skills without critique. You know what I mean? You want to create the feeling of levity, of light, of joy anytime you think about painting. I wanted to read you this comment left on the last video because I very much resonated with it when I read it. And I think it's a perfect description of why some artists can let go of their creativity after art school, or just whenever they're used to hearing so much critique. I dropped out of art school after a year, and even though I knew growing up that being an artist was a core tenet of my being, I didn't really make art for a decade after that. I never thought about critique being part of it for me, but I was terribly confused about concept and idea versus process. The joy in the soul was gone. I was way too in over my head. Nothing felt satisfying or good, in my opinion, anymore. When I read this comment, it really brought me back because I have a very similar experience. Right after graduation, I also stopped painting for about 2 years, and part of it was circumstance because I had started working full-time in some new corporate property management job, and I just felt like I didn't have time to be creative anymore. But once I had quit my corporate job, I realized that it went deeper than that, because even though I now had as much time as I wanted to create, because I'll link below my journey with quitting my job for art, because it's not as streamlined as you might think. It's not like I quit my job and then boom, I'm an artist. There was 6 months of me kind of teetering around in different kinds of part-time jobs and such, trying to figure out a way to make my lifestyle work. There was a period of about 6 months where I was unemployed. At first it was intentional, and then it was just the job market. But I remember having all the time in the world that I wanted to create, but I couldn't seem to get myself to do it. I felt very blocked. I felt like nothing I did was good enough anymore. And that's because for so long, it's sort of like my creativity felt like it had been living within structure and living within the approval of others. And then once that approval is gone, once the structure is gone, what happens to your creativity? The reality is that the creativity just wasn't there anymore. Or it's not that it wasn't there, it's that it had lied dormant in a way. It had gone to sleep because the version of myself that showed up for my artwork for the 4 years while I was in art school was different than the artist that I wanted to be. And so I was really trying to journey backwards to the me I was before I tried to please anyone before I tried to make artwork that would get the A+, that would get the nod of approval from my professors. I think one of the hardest things about transitioning from art school into the real working world as an artist is trying to battle the self-worth wound, because you spend so much time in art school trying to prove that your art is worth it, trying to prove that it's worth the better grade. You spend a lot of time, like essentially 4 years, in comparison mode, and comparison can be such a killer for joy and for your voice in general, because this is not about just creating work that sells, right? You want to make a life that you're proud of. You want to make work that you're proud of. And sometimes trying to toe the line between what you believe the market will pay for and what you enjoy creating is kind of a rough area, like it's kind of a difficult area to navigate and reach. And so sometimes artists can just get so all up in their head about, well, the work that I make just isn't popular. No one wants to buy the work that I make. What I find is that a lot of times this voice that comes up in your head trying to talk you down from making the work that you want to make, it's often that voice that causes you not to go far enough. We want to create work that is so undeniably full of passion that other people just cannot help themselves and they cannot tear their eyes away from it. And you only get there if you kill the critic. Let me tell you something. The advice that I hated the most when I was trying to become a working artist was this: just paint. Because in my head, I was like, are you assuming I'm not painting already? I was just like, are you kidding me right now? Like it felt a little condescending to me to be receiving that as artist advice, because I'm like, step 1, paint. Okay, we get it. Like that's why I'm here in the first place, right? Like I'm not gonna be here if I'm not painting. But there is an important piece to, I guess, like adjusting your practice so that you are in alignment when you're painting, because what you want to do is eventually get into a flow state of being able to create consistently within the same voice, within the same world that you build yourself. And you get there by incorporating little elements of art that you love. Sometimes the beginning stages of developing your artist's voice is master copies. And this is something that was very popular throughout the creation of art in general, like through centuries. If you can go into the studio and practice taking work that you love, whether it be off Instagram or older work from history books and such, Monet is a huge inspiration for me in my own work, then you can take little elements that you love most in that work and kind of pull it into your own practice. You also want to try painting subject matters that are in alignment with what you love the most. Because at the end of the day, there might come a time whenever collectors ask you, what is the story behind this piece? Why are you painting what you do? And even if you might not have like a specific story for that piece entirely, it's important to know where your roots are as an artist. For example, when I started painting my collection about painting the small joys in life, I noticed this motif would consistently pop up for me of flowers, but not only just like random flowers, they were specifically of roses. And it kind of happened subconsciously for me at first, like I was just kind of painting all the time. And I remember asking myself, like, why am I painting roses so often? And part of me thought that maybe it was just decorative, maybe it was just visually interesting. But when I dug a little bit deeper for myself, I resurfaced this memory of my earliest happy memory, picking roses with my grandfather in his front yard. When that memory was surfaced for me, it kind of opened up a new world. It really helped me develop my unique, not just the style that I painted in, but my why. And it wasn't just the story of picking roses with my grandfather that was important to me. It was this concept of earliest happy memory, this concept of early joy, this childlike joy. And when I thought about that even deeper, I started to see this common thread of childlikeness throughout the rest of my work. And it's really about this combination, not only of practicing the visual image, the actual thing that you're painting, but revisiting why that's important to you to create. Because artists, we are translators of the world, right? We see something unique in the world, or we feel something when we interact with the world, and we need to help other people see the world the way that we do. That is the primary function of artists. And there are so many artists in the world, and I say this from a stance of abundance. Like there's so much love, light, and people willing to share their lens of the world with us that it doesn't make sense for you in your own art practice to try to appeal to people that don't get you. I feel like art school really makes it easy for you to stop listening to your own inner voice. They place so much emphasis not only on pleasing the professors, but your classmates in general as well. I used to live so strongly by critique. I prided myself on being able to take critique very well. I heard feedback and I said, you got it. Let me change my direction. Let me listen to your voice instead of mine. And all that really did is erode my own artist voice. It eroded my confidence and it eroded my own sense of self. It didn't do anything to improve the quality of my work because my work just became confused after I listened to their voice instead of mine. Every artist has a path to walk in this world, and it's important to find your little groove and to just kind of like go on the way down your little path. You know what I mean? You do not have to do everything, and that is something that art critique kind of makes clear to you. It didn't feel like I was free to pursue my own interests and instincts. It felt like I was required to fit within a box and certain parameters. And if everyone in the class is trying to fit into those same box, that same parameter, right? How are they going to stand out and be themselves in a marketplace? You tell me, because it's not possible if every single person is trying to make the same thing to appease the same teacher or appease the same standards of what is good. Because what stands out in a marketplace is what is different, not what is good. Like there's some element of skill, some element of being able to like be appealing, of course, but if I've learned anything in being a working artist for the last few years, it's that you really need to distinguish yourself from other things that people could potentially buy, because consumers are not nitpicking your like specific style or this or that. They just gravitate towards it. They like it or they don't. They walk towards it or they walk past it. And you are never wanting to convince people who are walking past it to stay longer. You want to create dedicated fans of those who choose to stay. And that's why I think there's such a large popularity in being a self-taught artist, because those of us who were not self-taught, who went to art school, had the self beat out of us. Like we had all these ideas and missions and dreams, and then we went to art school and we were set, and they essentially told us create differently. And when we created differently, we kind of like lost ourselves in a way. I don't know, am I getting too deep about this? You tell me if you relate at all to kind of losing your sense of self in art school. But I can just speak for myself and say that the art that I'm making today post art school, like 4 or 5 years post art school, is so similar to the work that I made before it. And I essentially took a 4 or 5 year gap making stuff that I thought was impressive to other people, not to myself, not that I enjoyed making. Like, of course I enjoyed it to some aspect, but I really I sit here and I think sometimes about what my art might look like had I never gone to art school. And I also have some thoughts and opinions of ways that I would prefer art school be structured. So if you're interested in a video of like what we could do to fix the art school curriculum, comment below art school video and I'll make another video about what I would like to see art school look like. If not this, then what? And I also don't want it to come across like I'm trying to discourage people from going to art school, because that would be a little hypocritical of me. I did enjoy a lot of aspects of my art school experience. And so I think that all I can really offer you is this. If you are planning to go to art school, I need you to keep in mind that the voices, the critiques that you're going to get, they do not matter. They just don't. Like, the sad part to me, maybe, I might, like, if I were to go back in time, maybe I would be an art history major instead of art studio major, just because it's kind of sad to me that there is not more flexibility and more embracing of the unique artist self. There were several times close to the end of my degree where I knew what I wanted to paint and I was not allowed to paint those things because they wanted me to follow certain like, oh, it's time to paint fabrics. Oh, it's time to paint this. And it's like, but I know I wanted to be, at the time I wanted to be a figure painter. I'm like, if that's what I want to do, then why can't I just like paint what I want to paint? Editing Jen here popping in with a little tangent of something that I feel like wasn't explored well enough in the video. I recently posted a poll asking you guys what your experience was in art school, and some of you said that you did enjoy critique. And more specifically, there was someone that mentioned that they wish they got more feedback, more critique from people. And it just kind of created a question in my head about my perspective, my experience, and why it can vary from other people who might enjoy critique. Does critique ever make you a better artist? I think the trick is really knowing when and when not to listen to critique. Let me just tell you my little story. So from the age of like 8 to 10, I was a very diligent artist. I drew every single day in lined notebooks, even in sketchbooks whenever I got old enough for my family to start buying them for me. But I filled up so many sketchbooks from a very, very young age. Aw, little old me. This was dated for June 26th
of 2013.
And in this repetition of repeatedly drawing everything that I see, I built a lot of skills as an artist. I learned how to render the world that I saw with pen and ink, graphite, markers, all these kinds of things. So by the time I was in college, skill was not an issue for me. And I don't really say that to be arrogant. It's more something that people have commented on throughout my life. Whenever I was applying to art schools, I applied for a certain scholarship, and there was a certain room that I went in and showed them my little sketchbooks. And essentially it was a panel of judges who passed my sketchbook around in a circle. And one of the people had the sketchbook and they handed it back to me and they said, make sure someone sees this. I guess because some of the artwork inside was just kind of like, I wish I still had that sketchbook, but unfortunately I think my mom threw it away. That's okay, that's fine. Additionally, when I did get into college, I was in my first figure painting class, and I remember my professor was walking around the class commenting on people's drawings, critiquing them, and when he got to mine, he just kind of stood quietly for a minute. And then he said, where did you study before you came to this university? And so I don't say this to really like toot my own horn or be arrogant, but what I'm trying to demonstrate is I had skill. Like I didn't need to really improve upon like the drawing renderability by the time I was in college. And not everyone might be in this position, I'm realizing now. Because when I went into critique, because I didn't have that skill component that people were trying to critique, instead they were critiquing my style. They were critiquing my instincts and what I preferred to paint. So I felt the effects of the critique on my judgment call as an artist, on how to use that skill that I had built. I think that there is good purpose for critique when it comes to trying to build the skill in the first place. Because for instance, I remember being like 10, 11 years old, and I would draw a lot of like random characters in my sketchbook, and every single time I drew one of these characters, I would bring it to my sister and I'd be like, look, I have a drawing, and she'd be like, oh my gosh, it's so cute and beautiful. You know, like she would compliment a child on their drawing, as you do. And I would keep doing this day after day. I would draw and I'd bring it to her, she'd say she loved it, and then I'd go back and I'd draw another one, and they were all pretty similar drawings, almost like copy and paste kind of characters. And I remember one time I brought the sketchbook to her, same as I always do, and instead of saying, oh my gosh, I love it, she was quiet for a minute, and then as if she was like debating whether or not to break my heart. But she said, I think the head is a little bit too big, when she brought it that last time. And I was just like, huh? Like it was sort of like the loop got broken. I was like, what do you mean? I draw nice drawings and you tell me, you know, I had that moment. But I remember like having this feeling of, oh, I like looked at the drawing, I looked at her, I looked at the drawing, I'm like, you're right, the head is a little bit too big. And that was sort of the moment when I started to be like, I should draw what I see in real life, not just what I imagine, but what I see. And it was that moment that I kind of like started really improving my drawing skills, because I was like, I want to be able to look at this drawing and for it to be exactly what you see. But there comes a point in your artistic career where drawing exactly what you see just doesn't hit the spot anymore, because a photograph can do that, you know. That's always been my stance. I know that there are a lot of realism painters and I have a lot of respect for that skill. But for me, why would I want to spend all this time painstakingly rendering something that you can photograph really easily? In my opinion, like what I wanted to do was create a world. I wanted to create an experience. I wanted to create conversation. That's something that only a human can do, you know? So that's what was really important to me in my art practice. And so when I like reflect on all of this, I think that critique has its place, like whenever it's like in terms of skill, in terms of things like that. But I think that you get to a point where critique starts to become much more harmful than helpful. And I think that you also need to go into critique with a certain mindset, right? You can't go into critique believing that everyone else knows the right answer but you, because at the end of the day, critique is just opinion, you know? So I feel like when I was in art school, I would go into critique believing that everyone else knew what good art was and I didn't yet, because I'm just a student. But you do know what art you like. And I think that strengthening the skill of your preference, strengthening the skill of your tastes is much harder to do than your skill, because skill is really easy. It's like, did I check the box? Like the eye looks like an eye, the shading is right, the proportions are right, you know, like that's really easy to do. But trying to manufacture, craft, and diligently create a style that you love, to speak within a voice that you love, that's a little bit harder, right? Because I felt like I built my own skills, walked into university where I knew my own compass, I knew what I wanted to paint, and then I slowly had that compass deprogrammed. And I wrote the script for this video under the assumption that there are a lot of other artists out there like me, and I just wanted to like have a heart-to-heart with you and be like, you're not alone, kid. But what if you're not like me? Like, what if critique really did help you improve as an artist? What if you felt directionless and you craved more feedback and never got it? Interesting questions for sure. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoy these videos and you want to hear more stuff from me, I have a little club called My Small Joys Club where I write you a letter every single month and I send you a little art print to help you appreciate the small joys in life. Bring a little optimism, romanticize your life a little bit more. Join the Small Joys Club. As always, spending any amount of time here on this channel with me is a gift. I really do consider it a gift, and for that, this humble artist says thank you. Thank you. He's here this whole time, guys. Okay, Tazo, you want to do the Tazo song? Tea for Tazo! It's a Tazo party! Tea for Tazo! It's a Tazo party! Yay! There you go. Now you're protesting.